and welcome to our third episode of our Friends podcast with our Eparea group. Today we have with us Kaityn Wiens, who's in grade 12. She's going to be sharing on the topic of loyalty, and we're also going to be looking at the story of Ruth and Naomi and how their friendship also exhibits loyalty and how we can kind of learn from that even today. So Kaityn, why is loyalty important to friendship?
Yeah, I think loyalty is a super important aspect that is necessary in a friendship because I think both people need to know that you're there with them and that you'll stick by your friend throughout thick and thin. And I think that's why loyalty is probably one of the most important aspects in a friendship.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking today from the book of Ruth, and do you want to give us a little bit of background and where both Ruth and Naomi are kind of at, and give us a little bit of a backstory of how they became friends or where the friendship kind of began?
Yeah, for sure. So Naomi was married to a man named Elimelech, and they had two sons. Their names were Mahlon and Chilion. Kind of hard to pronounce. There was a famine in Bethlehem where they lived, so they moved to Moab where there was food for them and they could survive. Sadly, pretty soon after their move, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, passed away, and so she was left with her two sons. They shortly after married two Moabite women. Their names are Ruth and Orpah.
Mm-hmm.
So about 10 years after their move, Naomi's sons also died, and she was left with her two widowed daughter-in-laws who are all grieving.
Mm-hmm.
Since there was nothing really left for them in Moab, they started traveling back to Naomi's hometown of Bethlehem. But on the way, she became a little bit hopeless and gave up. So she told Ruth and Orpah to go back to their homelands and start their lives over again. She wanted to give them a chance to be happy, but she didn't really see that as an option for herself. That could happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of pain and sorrow and loss in the very start of their short relationship there. And I think during that heartache and that pain, that's where our friendships get tested the most. So what is Orpah and Ruth's response?
Yeah, so when I was doing my research for this, something really interesting that I found was the meanings of the name Ruth and Orpah.
Mm-hmm.
So Orpah is translated in Hebrew to the back of the neck, and the name Ruth is translated to a friend or companion.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you haven't heard this story until today, you can probably tell what's going to happen next. At first, when Naomi asks them to go, both refuse to leave her side, but after she pleads again, Orpah listens to her request and she goes back and she starts a life for herself. Ruth, however, stays with Naomi and she vows to never leave her side. She says in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 to 17, "Do not plead with me to abandon you or to return or not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely if anything but death separates me and you."
Yeah, that's a pretty intense verse. That's a pretty great statement from Ruth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a pretty big promise to make to a friend.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Naomi and Ruth continue on their journey to Bethlehem. At this point, I can't imagine Naomi would have been a great travel companion. She was pretty bitter and was pretty upset at God for what happened to her family. She even changed her name to Mara, which translates to bitter. This represented the grief that she was experiencing. So through all of this, Ruth still sticks by Naomi and doesn't give up on her. Even though Ruth's also grieving the loss of her husband, she powers through it for Naomi's sake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a great story of friendship, kind of surviving rough patches already. So what can we learn about Ruth's loyalty through this part of the story?
Yeah, I think this is such a beautiful example of what a loyal friend should be. Ruth takes an oath to stand by Naomi through thick and thin and to support her through this time of grieving, and even until she dies. Ruth no longer had an obligation to take care of Naomi. They weren't related anymore. So if Ruth wanted, she could have just left and gone back and married again and started a new life. But she didn't think about herself and her wants. She was loyal to Naomi, and she made the choice to stick by her through everything. This is the kind of friend that I think that I want to be. One who stays and supports my friends, not just when they're winning in life, but when they're going through tough times and they need someone to be in it with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. We definitely need to stick by our friends through the good and the bad. So do you want to continue? What happens next in the story?
Yeah, for sure. So once they got to Bethlehem, Ruth went out to gather food for her and Naomi. Back then, there was a rule set in place that the women could go into the fields after harvesters had gathered the crops, and they could take leftovers from there so they could have food for their families. The field Ruth chose just happened to be owned by a man named Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's husband. Ruth didn't know it yet, but that was her lucky day. Boaz noticed Ruth in the field and showed her compassion. He showed her where she could get the most grain, and he even told his harvesters, to leave more behind so that she could get the most grain and gather it and take it home to Naomi. He'd heard how she'd been taking care of her mother-in-law and commended her for it. Her efforts had paid off, and she was able to bring back much more than enough food for Naomi as a result of her hard work and Boaz's kindness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ruth is definitely showing that she's a hard worker and does a lot to provide for Naomi in this story. Can you speak about effort and the role of hard work in a friendship and how that kind of interacts with loyalty?
Yeah. I think one way that we can demonstrate loyalty in a friendship is through hard work and effort. And I think it's a super important thing in a friendship. Ruth
Mm-hmm.
demonstrates this in her friendship with Naomi. She recognizes her needs, and instead of sitting back and making Naomi go out and get food for them, Ruth takes action and goes out for her. In a friendship, both people need to be able to put in the effort to recognize each other's needs and to try our best. And I think we should try our best to support them in that.
Mm-hmm. So Boaz has definitely got a thing for Ruth. Where does their relationship end up? What does the relationship between Ruth and Naomi look like after this?
Yeah. So I think probably why Boaz and Ruth's relationship works out is because of Naomi's help.
Mm-hmm.
So when Ruth returned to Naomi and told her everything about what happened in the field with Boaz, Naomi told her that Boaz was a relative and immediately started to think of a plan that could possibly save their family. So Naomi told Ruth to go to an end of harvest party where Boaz would be celebrating and help to figure out how to ask Boaz if he would be their redeemer, who
Mm-hmm.
could save the family's name and take care of Ruth and Boaz. Ruth was hesitant to do this, and she didn't really know if she would be able to, but Naomi encouraged her and pushed her out of her comfort zone. She helped Ruth find the courage to go out and do this when she never thought she could by herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talked a lot about effort and how important that is in friendship. Now we see Naomi encouraging Ruth to step out into this new relationship. So can you speak more towards encouragement and how does that play into a healthy friendship?
Yeah, I think encouragement is another thing that really helps demonstrate loyalty in a friendship. So good friends, I think, should know how to encourage and push each other in a way that helps each other grow. Naomi does this. She knows Ruth's heart and what she's capable of, and she encourages her to go out and talk to Boaz. Friends should challenge and champion each other on and work together to keep each other accountable.
Mhm. Yeah, so great. We definitely need to know how to properly encourage our friends and hold them accountable to the things that they want to be held accountable to. So what resulted from Naomi's encouragement to Ruth?
So, in the end, Naomi's plan worked, and Boaz agreed to help the women. Since he was not first in line to be their redeemer, who could save them, he went to the man who was and convinced him to let Boaz take care of them instead. Boaz and Ruth ended up getting married, and they had a son named Obed. The crazy thing is, down the line, one of Ruth's and Boaz's descendants was the one who saved us all from our sin, Jesus. I think that's really cool how God orchestrated that and used their lives as a part of his plan.
Mhm. Yeah, we get to see in Boaz just a little sliver of our ultimate redeemer, right? That we find in Jesus, and that's so cool that we get to see that through the lineage as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, of Jesus' family. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. If you could summarize this podcast in one sentence, what would it be?
Yeah. I think we can learn a lot about loyalty, effort, and encouragement in friendship from Ruth and Naomi's friendship and their relationship. And I know that I can apply those lessons that I learned from this book into my friendships even now, because I
Mm-hmm.
think the lessons are still pretty relatable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, Kaityn, for sharing today on loyalty, effort, and encouragement. And I hope that you guys, throughout this series, were able to learn a few things about friendship just from these stories that we went through. And if you missed any of our other podcasts, they're all available on our IGTV, or if you want, you can check them out on YouTube as well. But yeah, we really enjoyed sharing with you on the topic of friends, and we hope that you learned something and that you're able to apply these awesome biblical stories and lessons into your daily lives. Kaityn, before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share with your friends?
Yeah. So when I was preparing for this podcast, I watched a series on Right Now Media about the Book of Ruth. It's by Bianca Olthoff. So I would encourage you guys, anyone watching, to go out and watch it because it gave me some really great insight into the book, and it was pretty hilarious. And yeah, it really helped me understand the book in a way that I haven't before. So I encourage you all to go and watch that if you have the chance to.
Yeah, and if you don't know what Right Now Media is, it's kind of like Christian Netflix with a lot of awesome devotionals and teaching resources. So if you ever want to start an account, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to send you an invite to our Right Now Media group so you can watch some of that great content. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a great week, and we hope that you learned a little bit about what it means to be a friend through this 3-week series. And thank you so much for being a part of it.